Hey, what's up everybody? It's Mike from Cornfield Customs, and in this episode we're going to do a deeper dive into the Mustang convertible project behind me, so stick around as we go through the project. Now that I'm back on this car that's been on hold for a little while, I figured I'd never really done a good deep dive or explanation into the project, why it's here, what all the work that's being done is. So that's what we're going to do in this episode, is kind of cover it from the beginning to where we are now. And I do have other clips on the channel of doing like the hood mod that we'll get into and some other small stuff. So we'll put links to that in the description if you want to see while we were doing that. But this is just a recap to cover the project and some of the work that we've had going on. When this project came in, originally it only came in to have me do a custom hood skin, gap the doors, and a few other small things. But once it got here, we found out there was a lot of extensive damage. So we're gonna throw some pictures in this video that we have posted online so you can see what we've been working with throughout the entire work project. So when we first started going on the car, we were looking around and we found some stuff that I really didn't like. A lot of it came down to the weld quality. It looked like the welding had been done with either some bad shielding gas, not enough gas, or something like that. And the welding really made me kind of nervous. And the deeper I dug on stuff, the worse it kind of got. So we ended up sitting down with the client and telling him what I found to that point and how I wanted to address it. And it was to kind of dig stuff out, re-weld it, and clean it up as we went. And the more work that went, the more stuff I found. I started checking to see if it was square, if it was level, how much flex was in the car. And I kind of came to the point where I didn't think it was worth trying to fix what was there. It would be easier to cut it out and start over. So I took it off the rotisserie and we threw it up here on the table and tried to get everything square. The car was out of square, it was twisted, and I could, with the A-post riser and the B-post riser on the frame table, I could grab the front clip and pull it down about 1 inch, and I could grab the back clip and pull it down about 3/4 of an inch. And at this point, the car had already had a full tube chassis built underneath of it, and I couldn't really figure out why it flexed so bad. So that was the biggest red flag to me, especially being a convertible. We don't want that kind of flex in the car. So it was tear everything out, start over. And that was kind of a tough thing to do, just due to the fact that the car was in primer. It had everything, you know, it had new doors, new quarters, new fenders, aprons, A-posts, floors, everything was new on it already. And I had to take all of that out and start completely over. So that's kind of where we are now. It's been a while. We took some time off on the car. I'm not really gonna get into that a whole lot, but we took some time off for the client, and now that we're back on here, I'm gonna show you kind of where we are. I've put new quarters, or I've put new fenders on, new inner aprons. I had to design a full new tube chassis for it, new uprights for the control arms, new Mustang 2 cross member. So then with the aprons, instead of leaving it the shock tower type, I went ahead and grafted the front apron and the rear apron and added a centerpiece. The deal with this car is he really wants like a factory concept or factory prototype car. So we want to utilize as much of factory type pieces as we can, not get too much super slick, super custom parts on it, because we want it to look like it could have been the concept car from 1970, 1972, whatever era he's going for, but he wanted to take the best of his favorite Mustangs and get them in the mix. So what the car started at is a 67 Mustang convertible, and I'll start here at the front and we'll kind of go around to the different segments and show you some of the stuff. There is a modified hood, so from here over on both sides is a 67, 68 hood. You can see the Cleco holes here. And I did a couple videos on splicing this together, and then the center is a 70. So he liked the center section of a 70, but he wanted it to fit the car. So I had to split the inner and outer and do the outside work, and then I took the center section here that's a peak off of the 70 hood and grafted it into the 67, 68 hood.
Yeah, you can still see right here.
Yep. Yeah, so the seam is right about here. One thing, whenever I'm in process of doing something, you can see cleco holes, because I always leave the cleco holes to be welded up last. So that is always a signifier of where something's been done. So we've got the custom hood skin, top and bottom, and then as far as the engine goes, it's got a Kazi Boss 429. I still have to come in. We're going to put like a 427 style scoop on it, and here you can see I even had to modify the inner structure a little bit to tie everything together and for some clearances. So that's kind of where we are with the hood. I still haven't put everything together, inner and outer yet, just due to the fact that I want to get that scoop put on. But even though, like I said, the car came in mostly together, since I took the frame out, it tore up the core support, so it's got a new core support in it. We ended up, like I said, another set of new fenders on it, full tube chassis. I had to redesign some of the suspension on it. It wasn't set up quite right. It didn't have the adjustability that I thought it needed. So I went ahead and redesigned all of our coilover mounts, the Mustang 2 cross member, all of that stuff to get it where I think it needs to be. It's all just tacked together right now. And I had to come in, let me open the door here. So we came in and had to put inner and outer A-posts on it. I still have to come in and fix where the windshield post was. This was kind of, everything on it was like welded together solid, which made things way harder. Not only did they put it together at the spot weld seams, they came back and they edge welded everything, which just pulled and twisted and warped stuff, and it makes it way harder to fix. So all of this was just overlapped, edge welded, as well as plug welded. So it was super hard to get apart, and some of it didn't fit together right in the first place. So I still got to come in and make little pieces here and there, but we did outer A-post, inner A-posts. We had to put a new dash in it because the old dash was all butchered up. I'm going to have to make a custom firewall and all new floors. You can see the 2x4 mandrel bent frame that I designed and put in. We're tying it into the rockers, so it'll still be a unibody style car, just kind of with our own little twist on it. So we'll have custom floor pans. I was able to leave the door skin or the door shells and skins alone. These are what were on it when it came in. The majority of the quarter panels are what it had when it came in. The windshield frame, I think the windshield frame is one of the only few parts that are original left on the car.
I got a question.
Yep.
Have you ever heard about the ship a thesis?
No.
So this boat, I don't know the full story, but this boat, I had every single part replaced on it. And people want to argue, is it the same boat? Is this the same car?
Yeah. For me, I don't necessarily think this is the same car that was dropped off and that I've been working on. I think it's evolving into a much better car. And that's the biggest thing for me, is I could have just let things go and said, you know, it's not my problem. But if the client is spending money here, I want them to be aware of what's going on with their project. So that's kind of why we took the direction we did, and we are redoing a lot of stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's the same car. It's mostly a brand new car. I wouldn't even say it's technically a 67 or 68 convertible. It's all new, but it's based on an original car. So right now, actually we'll get to what I'm currently working on here in a minute. We'll do a finished walk around of what's been done so far before we dive into what my plans are currently. So the majority of the quarter panel is what was on there when it came in, but they had made their own quarter extension to go around the taillight, and they'd made it out of 1/8 inch plate, and they had so they'd come in and they'd spot welded all of this, and then they had edge welded it. And then they had welded that 1/8 inch plate on top of that. So to take that out, to get in to fix this stuff, there was a lot of damage. and I couldn't find just this extension piece. And like I said, they'd welded all of that, so it would have been a real bear to get out. So what I did is I bought another set of quarters and I just replaced the back. And you guys may have seen the video where I was cleaning up the weld seam on this side. The other weld seam is still not 100% finished out yet, so you'll see it when we get there. But the reason I had to do that was, being a 67, 68, the client likes 69 Mustang taillights better. So we put in a 69 Mustang taillight pan, which is a little bit of a challenge because they're so much taller. So this section and this section are 67, 68, and then the center section all the way around is 69. So once all of that was grafted in, I had to make these little tie-in pieces here at the corner to go from the 69 into the 67, 68 quarter panel. So these little edges I had to make both sides, and right now the rear tail panel is clipped in, just clecoed in place. Like I said, I like to work in big areas and get everything clecoed together, fit and working as it should, and then I'll come back and I'll start welding everything in. So both sides of that are done. The rear tail pans I'm pretty happy with. Here you can see the quarter extension where it's not completely finished out yet, but this was off of another set of quarters. And that kind of leads us to where we are today. I'm actually working on the car this week. So when we rough cut everything out, I had left the outer wheel wells in place just to give the quarters some strength. So I'm working on cutting out the other side. But if you get in here, Dom, you can see like this was the majority of how the work was. The floors, the firewall, a lot of the tie-in pieces were multiple layers of 1/8 inch plate. So I had to take all of that stuff out, and when I took everything out, I saved it all and I weighed it, and I think we took out like 2,200 pounds of metal that just didn't need to be in here. It was unbelievable. So like even this, like they had come in and they had rosette welded the wheel wells in, and I think the rosette welds are 3/4 of an inch on center. So there's a ton of them. So it's a real pain to get this stuff out because I can't just drill it like a normal spot weld because they're so big. So I come in and I rough cut out the inner wheel well, and then I grind it from the backside, being careful not to grind through the quarter, which I want to save.
Yeah, that seems really difficult to do.
Yeah, and especially like in this area because the wheel well is really small. So I'm inside trying to not get a face full of sparks and be able to see what I'm doing. So it's very tedious and time consuming to do that. But the good thing is I think the wheel wells are about the last piece I have to take out that's left from the original. And then everything else will be mostly replaced. Because I'm gonna have to do trunk drops. Like this side still has the trunk drop in that I've got some tools laying on. This side I've already got it taken out. But what I've worked on earlier this week is they also, when they put the panel in behind the rear window, they did the same thing. They rosette welded everything and spot welded it, and it warped stuff, it didn't look good, and it had a lot of filler on it. So took that out, and same thing, I had to rough cut the panel out and then come back and grind it away to get to the good piece underneath. So I got it all clecoed in, and I got a little bit of cleaning up to do here on these edges. I just want to hammer and dolly them a little bit more, get that gap nice and tight before anything is final welded into place.
There. That'll be better to see.
Yeah, so just a little bit more hammer and dolly work here to close all that up and get everything nice and uniform. And then this one will be finished to the point it'll be ready to weld in when I get to that point, even though we're not quite there yet.
We should probably cover this because someone's going to ask how to keep the cars not from rusting.
The biggest thing I found is the shop is climate controlled. So it's about 70 degrees year round, and since there's not a lot of people in here all the time, the biggest thing is don't be finger banging the bare metal to death. Like when I'm done working on it for a while, I'll clean it with glass cleaner just to get like smudges off and fingerprints and stuff like this where my shirt's rubbed up against it. I'll wipe everything down with glass cleaner and it'll be fine. This car's been here a while, and you can see there's no surface rust on it, and there's no metal protectant, none of that stuff on there.
That was one of my questions when I first came to the shop on one of the shop nights, is I saw this Mustang sitting here, and raw metal, I'm like, why isn't it all rusty?
Yeah, and I mean, I get that question all the time, and you can see it, like there's a little bit here.
Yeah, I think someone touched it.
Yeah, it's from this right there. That's what it is, because everybody comes in and it's super tempting. They want to touch everything. And anywhere somebody touches, it's going to start to surface rust. So you got to be really mindful of that, because the oils and acids in our skin and our pH level can make stuff surface rust. So this was a huge undertaking of a car, just a project in general. The funny thing about this is when I started digging into it and got it on the table, I had a couple people come by and they were like, "You're out of your mind. You're never going to be able to put this car back together." Because when I first started on it on the table, it was the windshield frame, the rockers, and the quarters. Hopefully Dom can find those pictures of how far down it was. But I had the frame all cut out, no engine, no transmission, whole front end was off. I didn't mention, but we had to do the inner and outer cowl again. I mean, everything on this car has been replaced at least once, some of it twice. But so many people came in and they're like, "I can't believe you took a Mustang convertible down to the rockers, quarters, and windshield frame and are starting completely over." And that's kind of what I'm doing. I get a lot of really big, complicated projects, just like the 34.5 window I did a handful of years ago, that it was almost torn down this far. So I like the big, intimidating projects. They take a while.
I mean, this gives me confidence for my own projects that working on cars, they may seem really complicated, but a lot of times you just gotta separate them into different slots.
Yep.
And then there you go.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you can't look at this as a whole project. You have to break it down, like the old saying is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yep.
You know, I tend to be scattered all over the place, so like that's why the front end's partially done and the back end's partially done, because now at least it looks like a car. It gives us a little bit of motivation to keep us going. If I was still focusing just on the main section of the body and I'm still working on floors and firewall, but the back end's not done and the front end's not done, it could be really discouraging. So I kind of do things in little groups to keep the motivation going, and at least now it looks like a real car. And I mean, it's so nice. Like, I don't have the latches in, but the fact that, you know, the doors, everything lines up, everything swings nice, and, you know, it needs a little bit more bracing here and there, but it didn't have that when it came in. You know, everything was kind of clunky and it didn't fit right. So it's a big project, but it's really exciting to see it come together. Yes, that's kind of where we are. And like, here's some of the stuff I took out. Yeah, like here I had to come in and grind out all of those spot welds.
Wow.
And like here's this is the other piece. This was the top piece I had to do. It's just real tedious to come in and try to grind those away and not get into the other parent material you're trying to save. And that's the outer wheel well for the passenger side, where I just rough cut everything, and then I have to go back in and grind off what's left. And like here was the trunk drop, but that's how everything was. Like, everything was spot welded and edge welded. And I mean, just tons and tons of spot welds, edge welds everywhere.
Yeah, that just adds so much weight.
Yeah, well, and just so much more time. Because even this piece here, like, granted, I don't have the whole thing anymore. It's all cut up. But this seam here would have been spot welded underneath, and then a spot weld, a spot weld, a spot weld. Mm-hmm. It had those spot welds, and then they had came back and they had edge welded everything. Mm-hmm. So it just made it that much harder to take back apart, is everything was over welded. I'm not sure if you can see it. Even here inside the quarter, you can see some of that up at the top, where it's spot welded and edge welded all the way down. And you know, some of the welds up in that hole and these spot welds here, like, I'm gonna have to clean that up the best I can, but I don't want to take the whole quarter off just to fix that stuff. So I still have to come in, take this section out, that piece off, and here is where I'm grinding off the wheel well flange to try to get that cleaned up. And here I've already started on that. but here's some more of the, instead of being spot welded, it was fully welded and spot welded, and it just makes things way harder.
Another question I have is, what is the thickness of this table that you have it on?
So I'll give you a little bit of history on the table. I didn't actually build this table. This table came from Clay Cook's shop in northern Kentucky. Before he passed away, I was able to purchase it from him. It's a really handy table. So it's made out of 4" by 4" by 3/16 steel tubing. I don't think I ever even measured what the real dimensions are on it, so I don't know what all the dimensions are, but I really liked, some of these were welded, like this one stitch welded on the sides, but I like that you can unbolt the cross beams and move them around. Yeah, they're super handy. The problem with a chassis table like this is they're big. When you're using them, they're awesome. When you're not using them, they suck because they're just in the way. And each one's going to be different. Like I like a solid surface table just because it's easy to locate stuff, but then you can't climb in the inside. So you have to kind of figure out what works best for you. But when you're doing something like this that's torn down this far, you have to have a good table, some kind of good surface to work from. You can't do this on a rotisserie, which is what I think part of the problem was with this project, is everything was done on a rotisserie. The quarters, the floors, the chassis, everything was done on a rotisserie, and you can't ensure that that's staying square and level. If you're tearing one down this far, it has to be on some kind of fixture table to where you can brace everything up.
Would you rather have what you have for the Roadster back there or this?
It depends on what you're doing. So the one in the back is a little bit smaller. I used to build...
You want to go back there?
We can. So the table that the Roadster's on is a little bit different. It's similar. It's made out of I-beam. It's real narrow because I used to build my chassis research dragster chassis on this table. So I'm just repurposing it. It is handy, but the problem you run into is you still have to be able to put risers on everything. And something this narrow, if I were to try to build the Mustang on that, I'd have to have all kinds of cross beams and risers to get that up. So the bigger the car, the bigger the table. Like I said, it'd be a real challenge to build something like a Mustang or a Chevelle or a Corvette on a table this small. It's, even a Model A is kind of pushing the size limits on a table that's little like this one.
What did you build the Streamliner on?
The Streamliner I built on this table because it's narrow. Mm-hmm. The length wasn't as critical because I could let it hang forward and backwards. Yeah. But it's still, the chassis itself is pretty narrow. Mm-hmm. From here, what my goal is to get the inner and outer wheel wells done again. I'm gonna have to widen the inner a little bit because he's got a little bit wider of a tire on it. So I'm gonna start here at the back and work my way forward, moving on with new trunk drops, trunk floor, get the gas tank mounted, inner and outer wheel wells, then start bracing everything up, and I'll get into the main floor in the cockpit all the way up to the firewall. I'm really hoping to be able to hit this car hard this year and make a lot of progress. Try to make up for some lost time, but we're not going to get too big of a rush to where we sacrifice any quality or detail work. But I am really excited to see this one come together. I think this is going to be a super neat car with a lot of trick little details that most people won't notice. So yeah, that's kind of where we are on this project. All right, so that's going to wrap up this video on the recap of the Mustang. Hopefully it's a little insightful. What we'll do also is we're going to drop a link to the Facebook page of the entire build album if you want to see progress from day one to where we are now. And I also wanted to talk to you guys about our monthly newsletter. We'll put that link in the description too if you guys want to sign up. You just get one email once a month and it talks about what's going on in the shop, new products, classes, events we'll be at, and one of my favorite parts about the newsletter is we're going to be doing a reader's rides. So if you want to submit your car to be in our monthly newsletter, give us some pictures, give us a brief description of what you got going on. We'll put that in there so other people can network with you and see what you're up to. And again, that link will be in the description below. I think that's going to be really cool to help kind of network one another and get everybody's projects out there to one another, and hopefully make a much better kind of networking and group that you guys can bounce ideas off of. So check that out in the description below. We're going to talk about the newsletter in future months as well, so make sure to check that out. And I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Again, hopefully it was a little insightful since I've never really talked about the Mustang. So you guys know kind of what's going on and why it's here. So thanks again for checking out this video. Make sure to check out a bunch of our other content, and we will keep at it to get you more better content in the future, and we will catch you guys on the next one.